this is what my takeaway from the tiers right now is like it's like eye candy, your titles. You want to distract us with all these nice titles and was it a fluke? So you bring the Pats who were in the Super Bowl all the way down.
It's way too early, so we're not so focused.
Finally, the Hunters, so you have them up. Like, wait. The Chiefs, it's the tiers. They should not be this high. They simply should not be this high.
Discuss.
And this has nothing to do with me not just believing in this team, but
should not be above any playoff teams?
They don't deserve that right now. They do not deserve that. When you have a quarterback in question of whether or not he's going to even start the season, they do not deserve to be right there. I'm sorry, Nick. Like, you can say they're the hunted, they're finally the Hunters, excuse me, and that's fine, but they can hunt from well below because they're going to have to.
Got them beneath three AFC teams.
Yeah. Every other team that finished third or less in their own division is well below them. So just because they have Patrick, we don't know if they're going to have Patrick Mahomes once again. And when we've seen them without Patrick Mahomes, this is what they look like.
Without Patrick Mahomes, they're not a good team.
We know that, which is
agree.
why I'm shocked that you just have them starting already way far too high for these tiers. And again, don't be distracted, everyone, by the titles of the tiers. It's still the tiers. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he has them as the 6th best team in the National Football League right now.
Be low.
No, that is not low. It's not low enough.
Now that I think about that, you're right.
So
that was a strong take.
So here's the thing. That would have felt more compelling if I hadn't just watched the AFC side of the playoffs. Because I don't know who you watched this postseason in the AFC and were like, oh my God, watch out for them. Because I didn't see any of those teams. And you're right to at least question whether or not Patrick will be there for week 1. I'm here to tell you he's going to be dancing at Travis's wedding and starting for the Chiefs in week 1 in September, but we'll see. But I am very confident that if they get in, and I think even if Patrick missed the first month, they could get in, that they will immediately regain their spot as the scariest team in the AFC, since every team that will be in the playoffs will have something in common. Yeah, that team's knocked us out before in the playoffs. Maybe not the Patriots. We haven't played you guys. And so, we'll see. I feel like there was a level of deference given to the 2010 or 2009 New England Patriots, who hadn't won a Super Bowl in 5 years and were coming off missing the playoffs and their quarterback blowing out his knee, but that the Chiefs evidently have not earned, so be it. We'll see how it plays out.
All right, let's dive into this, because there's a substantial amount to unpack here, and the conversation around the Kansas City Chiefs, as usual, manages to generate extreme viewpoints that require some serious calibration. My initial reaction is one of exhaustion, honestly, because the discourse on programs like First Things First often creates such whiplash with its hyperbolic takes. I find myself disagreeing with Greg on multiple fronts, and then Nick, as he is prone to do, takes the counter-argument to the next extreme, framing the Chiefs as the most dangerous team in the league because of their historical dominance over other franchises. Let's inject some reality into that narrative. The Jacksonville Jaguars do not care about the Chiefs' pedigree. The Buffalo Bills do not care. The Baltimore Ravens do not care. The Denver Broncos do not care. None of these teams are approaching a matchup with Kansas City from a place of embedded fear or intimidation. That concept simply does not exist in the modern NFL, not in the way these media narratives try to manufacture. It wasn't even truly there during the height of the New England Patriots dynasty, so let's stop pretending it was a thing. Opposing teams had, and rightfully so, a tremendous amount of respect for Bill Belichick's defensive game plans, for Tom Brady's clutch execution, and for the organizational excellence in New England. But the Atlanta Falcons weren't cowering in the locker room before facing them. The Philadelphia Eagles weren't intimidated. The New York Giants certainly weren't scared. They beat them twice on the biggest stage. That's not how professional athletes operate. It's not how competitive coaching staffs prepare. So, we need to retire the notion that there's some mystical aura of fear surrounding the Chiefs that gives them a psychological edge before the ball is even kicked. It does not exist. Now, could I entertain the idea that early in the Patrick Mahomes era, when he was first bursting onto the scene and doing things we had literally never seen before, there was a sense of invincibility? When opposing defenses were watching film and asking themselves, what are we witnessing? How do we possibly stop this? Sure, in that specific window, I can see a case for genuine intimidation. But that moment has passed. It is gone. The primary reason for that shift is the dramatic elevation of coaching quality across the entire National Football League. Look around at the minds currently running teams. You have Liam Cohen emerging as a brilliant offensive architect. You have Sean Payton, a Super Bowl winner, now in Denver. You have John Harbaugh, a future Hall of Fame coach, in Baltimore. You have Mike McDonald, one of the brightest defensive savants, leading the Chargers. You have Sean McVay, who has already reshaped modern offensive football in Los Angeles. These coaching staffs now look at Kansas City and say, with genuine conviction, we can hang, we can compete, we can scheme against them. You are no longer sending coaching staffs into battle against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes that are miles and miles behind in terms of strategic acumen and game planning sophistication. That gap has closed considerably, and it's one of the reasons I consistently struggle with the extreme narratives surrounding the Chiefs. The takes swing so wildly from one end of the spectrum to the other that it becomes genuinely exhausting to track. However, and this is a significant however, this is precisely where I part ways with Greg's assessment. His assertion that the Chiefs should not be ranked above any other playoff team heading into next season is something I wholeheartedly disagree with. Let's establish the parameters for this discussion first. I am not going to engage in the speculative game of guessing whether Patrick Mahomes will be fully recovered from his surgery by week 1, or whether he might need time to knock off rust, or if he'll look like his vintage self immediately. That's a completely made-up guessing game with no reliable answers. For the sake of this exercise, and to evaluate Nick's take through the lens he's using, I am going to operate under the assumption that Patrick Mahomes is 100% healthy. He is the best version of himself. The ankle surgery is a non-factor. The injury never happened. That is the lens I'm applying to the Kansas City Chiefs right now for the purpose of this ranking conversation. I'm not trying to predict a timeline for when he might return to peak form. I'm not factoring in the possibility that it takes until October for him to look right. Not for this take. When you view the Chiefs through that lens, it becomes clear that they have absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt. If you tell me Patrick Mahomes is fully healthy, and you add in the context that this team now possesses top draft capital, we're talking picks in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds, I am going to have more confidence in the Kansas City Chiefs than I am in the Green Bay Packers. More confidence than in the New England Patriots. More confidence than in the Baltimore Ravens. More confidence than in the San Francisco 49ers. More confidence than in the Los Angeles Chargers. More confidence than in the Houston Texans. I could continue listing teams, but the point stands. Now, I can understand a reasonable argument that doesn't want to place the Chiefs definitively above all those teams and instead wants to group them in the same tier. I can respect that perspective. But if you force me to make a binary choice, if you ask me, who do you think will be better next season, the Chiefs or the Patriots? I'm taking the Chiefs. The 49ers or the Chiefs? I'm taking the Chiefs. The Texans or the Chiefs? I'm taking the Chiefs. That doesn't mean I believe the Chiefs are invincible. It doesn't mean I think they would win every single head-to-head matchup against those teams. Of course, any of those teams could beat Kansas City on any given Sunday. That's the nature of the NFL. But if we're playing the game of making way too early predictions based on confidence factors, that's where I land. This is exactly how I felt about the Rams all season long. I wasn't always convinced they were the most talented team in the league, but I had the most confidence in them because they had earned that trust through demonstrated performance. The Chiefs have absolutely, unequivocally, earned that same level of trust. If everything is perfectly healthy and the Chiefs produce a season similar to what we just witnessed, I would find that genuinely surprising. And that's saying something. I have to be honest, I was surprised by how uneven Patrick Mahomes looked this past year. I defended some of his statistical anomalies. I defended some of the losses, pointing to supporting cast issues or defensive struggles. I even kept them ranked as a top team when they were technically winless early in the season, operating on the assumption that they would improve as the year progressed, especially when they got Rashee Rice back and the offense gained continuity. I believed that then. and I still believe that general trajectory was correct. However, watching the games week to week, I couldn't ignore what my eyes were telling me. There were moments where I found myself thinking, wow, Mahomes is missing some easy ones. There were decisions that were objectively terrible. There were interceptions that had no business being thrown, regardless of offensive line performance, regardless of who was running routes. It was simply bad quarterback play by the standards he himself had established. I said this in a clip recently, and I'll reiterate it now. I would be genuinely fascinated to see what Patrick Mahomes looks like this coming season, even if he had never suffered an ankle injury, because there was such a clear and obvious deviation from his normal level of performance. The fact that he now adds a significant surgery and rehabilitation process into the equation adds an entirely new layer of complexity and uncertainty. If we continue to see that same level of inconsistency, I would find that pretty jarring. I would be shocked if that version of Mahomes persists, but the possibility exists, and it's worth acknowledging. This brings me to a broader observation about the state of the league's elite quarterbacks, a thought I've been circling for a while now. I'm not entirely sure we should expect Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes to simply revert to their vintage 2020, 2021, 2022 forms as if nothing has changed. That's not to say those peak years are permanently behind them or that they're in decline. But I do question whether the situation, and by situation, I mean the totality of the team around them, the roster construction, the supporting cast, needs to be more ideal now to unlock those transcendent versions of themselves than it did earlier in their careers. Think about it. All three of these quarterbacks have been significantly banged up within the last calendar year. Lamar Jackson was dealing with injuries that caused him to miss multiple games. Josh Allen just underwent surgery on his foot. Patrick Mahomes just had surgery. We can even throw Joe Burrow into this conversation, who also had surgery and plays for the most inconsistent organization of the bunch. When you step back and look at it, 3 of the top 4 quarterbacks in the league all went under the knife recently. That's actually kind of crazy when you let it sink in. That's a significant data point. My evolving theory is this. If the roster surrounding these quarterbacks is good enough, and I might even go so far as to say great enough, meaning they have legitimate weapons at receiver, a competent and cohesive offensive line, a functional run game, and reliable play calling, then they can still unlock their true peak performance. They can reach that level where we say, we have never seen this quarterback play better. This is the absolute best version we could possibly expect from them. I believe all of those quarterbacks retain the capacity to show that level. But I genuinely question whether, at this stage of their careers, if they don't have that great roster around them, we will be able to witness that same elevation. In years past, I always argued that Allen and Mahomes, in particular, possessed a unique resilience. My argument was always that even if your roster was bad, even if you didn't have a good team around them, these quarterbacks were more likely than anyone else to do the most with the least. Not to win a Super Bowl with a terrible roster, not to dominate the league, but to maximize limited resources and keep the team competitive. I trusted their ability to elevate subpar talent. I now wonder if that level of resiliency, that superpower, is still what it once was. I'm not saying they've lost the ability entirely. I'm questioning whether the margin for error has shrunk. And I think we saw evidence of this with Mahomes this past season. He was not able to consistently put the team on his back and drag them across the finish line in the way we had become accustomed to. He just wasn't. That leads me to believe that at this point in their careers, these quarterbacks may be just a little bit more beholden to the quality of their roster. But when that roster is there, when the pieces are in place, they absolutely still have the ability to play out of their minds and reach those historic peaks. This is a crucial consideration when trying to project who the Kansas City Chiefs are moving forward. There are so many variables in play. Does Rashee Rice take another developmental leap? Does Xavier Worthy settle into the offense and become a consistent downfield threat? Is there a better understanding of what Travis Kelce is and isn't at this stage of his legendary career? Does Mahomes himself need to settle into a different style of play, a stylistic evolution necessitated by age, injury, and the natural progression of his career? This was always going to be a fascinating transition to watch because people have been comparing him to Tom Brady for years, and Brady represented a very specific archetype of quarterback. His ability to play at an elite level into his late 30s and 40s was always going to be easier for him to achieve than for a player like Mahomes or Allen or Lamar. The style of play is fundamentally different. We have never really seen quarterbacks with the skill sets of Allen, Lamar, and Mahomes, the combination of elite arm talent with dynamic rushing ability, reach the levels of greatness they've all achieved, and then navigate the back half of their careers. How does their game need to evolve and change if they want to continue playing into their mid to late 30s? We've seen other mobile quarterbacks like Cam Newton and Michael Vick, but they're not Mahomes. They're not Lamar. They're not Allen. Those comparisons only go so far. So, I'm genuinely curious, and we might get an expedited version of this evolutionary process because of Mahomes' injury. I don't know what that looks like. I believe he can do it. If you told me Mahomes could never scramble again and had to be a pure pocket passer for the rest of his career, I still believe he would be great. But it would change who he fundamentally is as a quarterback. And what does that mean for the Chiefs' offense? I don't entirely know the answer to that question. This line of thinking also leads to an interesting consideration about the next generation of quarterbacks. Does this create an opportunity for younger, healthier, more durable quarterbacks like Caleb Williams or Drake May or Bo Nix? Maybe they don't possess the same ability to maximize a flawed roster that a prime Mahomes did. Maybe they can't single-handedly elevate a mediocre team to contention in the same way. But do they have the ability to be more resilient to the ups and downs of roster quality? Can they better withstand injuries on the offensive line, fluctuations in run support, or inconsistency at receiver simply because they are younger, and their bodies haven't accumulated the same mileage and surgical history? I find that question incredibly thought-provoking, and it's something I'm going to be watching closely this coming season. Returning to the immediate question of the Chiefs' standing, I do believe they deserve, they are owed, and they have earned a tremendous amount of respect and belief. They have done it for too long and at too high of a level to be dismissed or ranked below teams that haven't accomplished a fraction of what they have. I also agree with the underlying point Nick was making about the state of the AFC. When you look around the conference right now, there isn't a single team that blows you away with their apparent superiority. There's no juggernaut that looks untouchable. That means if the Chiefs get into the playoffs, yes, they can beat the Bills, they can beat the Broncos, they can beat the Jaguars, they can beat the Ravens, but you also have to imagine that the Ravens are going to be better next year. You have to imagine the Jaguars will improve, the Bills will be better, or at least as competitive as they've always been with the Chiefs year after year. I do believe the Chargers will be better under Harbaugh. I do believe the Patriots will be better. All of that is on the table. But right now, today, without seeing free agency or the draft, is there a collection of 3, 4, or 5 teams in either conference that are just levels above everyone else? No, I don't think that exists. Even the Seattle Seahawks, who I believed were the best team in the NFL this past season and ultimately won the Super Bowl, I don't think they're levels and levels above the competition. They could have lost to the Rams. The Rams could have lost to the Panthers or the Bears. The Bears could have lost to the Packers. The Broncos could have lost to the Bills. The Bills could have lost to the Jaguars. Everything is so fluid and up in the air right now. That's just football, man. I think we're in for another season of chaos. Everyone kept saying this past year was one of the craziest seasons we've ever witnessed. And going into it, I predicted it would be one of the most competitive years we've ever seen. I kept saying the floor of the league was rising. And while I'm not entirely sure that's why it happened, we definitely got one of the wildest years in recent memory. I believe we're right on track for more of the same. The way the NFL is structured right now, with elite quarterback talent spread across both conferences, with coaching quality dramatically increasing and being distributed more evenly, with a fascinating balance between awesome young offensive minds and awesome young defensive minds, we have the ingredients for sustained parity. We have coaches paired with the right quarterbacks, and we're seeing the benefits of developmental continuity. The young quarterbacks, Drake May, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, now have some continuity with their coaching staffs and their rosters. They're not at a massive coaching disadvantage where they're talented, but their coordinator got fired. There's stability. All of these factors being spread out and elevated across the league is going to continue to produce wild, unpredictable chaos. I genuinely believe that. At this point, before we know how free agency shakes out, before the draft, before training camp injuries, I think we're in for another wild ride. The Seattle Seahawks just won the Super Bowl. I was a huge believer in them going into the season, but I didn't predict they would win it all, because I don't claim to know who the hell is going to win the Super Bowl. But they were the number 1 seed, and the Denver Broncos were the number 1 seed in the AFC. That's pretty wild when you think about it. So who's to say it couldn't be the Chargers next year? Who's to say it couldn't be the Bears? Who's to say it couldn't be the Saints? I'm serious. Who's to say that Derek Carr and Kellen Moore and the Saints aren't at the top of the NFC this coming season? The NFL is genuinely wild right now. When you get the right coach paired with the right quarterback, and your roster is just good enough, as long as you don't have catastrophic liabilities on defense or an offensive line that's completely overmatched, you can do damage. You can make a run. And we have a fascinating distribution of coaching talent and quarterback talent across the league right now. It's going to be interesting to see how the Chiefs navigate that landscape. For years, they had such a massive head start, such a massive advantage in the coach-quarterback combination over the teams they faced. They were beating the Jaguars with Doug Peterson. Okay, congrats. They were taking down the Ravens with John Harbaugh. Okay, they were beating the Bills with Sean McDermott. Okay, there was such a profound disadvantage for those opposing teams and such a massive advantage for Kansas City that it felt almost preordained. I think that gap has closed significantly. But even with that closure, they still deserve way more benefit of the doubt than many of these other teams because of what they've accomplished, what they've proven over a sustained period, and what the other teams are either trying to accomplish for the first time or haven't quite achieved yet. We'll see how it all unfolds. Those are just my thoughts on the matter, and I genuinely want to hear yours. What do you think about the Kansas City Chiefs standing heading into next season? Do you align with Greg's perspective that they shouldn't be ranked above any playoff team? Or do you side with Nick, who argued that if anything, they're ranked too low? Let me know where you land. I read every single comment that comes through, whether you agree with my analysis or you think I'm completely off base. Either way, let's use this space to generate some real discussion. Let's get into some spirited debates, some friendly disagreements, some good old-fashioned football arguments. But ultimately, let's remember to have some fun with it. And please, if you're enjoying the content and the community we're building, do consider subscribing to the channel. We're creating something special here, and I would absolutely love to have you be a part of it. My goal is to build something that we all feel genuinely connected to, something we're all excited to contribute to and be part of. I think we're well on our way to making that a reality. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It genuinely helps with visibility and navigating the unpredictable nature of the algorithm. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I'll see you in the next one.